Welcome to Alligator Preserves, everyone. I am your host, Laurel McHargue, and I have an extra special guest with me this afternoon. His name is Robert, but we're going to call him Robear Isenberg. Robear, welcome to Alligator Preserves.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We are going to talk today about a very funny book you have because you're a very funny man. Your book is called Why Men Are Suspicious of Yoga. Some funny stories and some not so funny. Now, just for you today, I've got on my yoga gear. And those of you who are just listening to the podcast, you have to go to the YouTube channel and see this because I've got my stretchy strings. I'm on my yoga ball, actually. You can't see that, but I am. So I'm ready. I'm ready for you, Robear. Are you ready for me?
Well, I'm going to try. I'm going to try my best.
All right. Well, tell our audience a little bit about you. Who are you and why Robear?
Um, Robear actually came about. I took a class in Cambridge many years ago, and it was a storytelling class. I had, never performed my stories in any public place. I had some at home, but never in a public place. And I took this class, and at the end of it, I said, "What do you do? What do you do with this knowledge?" And he said, "You go across the street to the divinity school." And he said, "On the third floor will be a man named Brother Blue, an African American." And so I went up, and there I was peeking in, and people were telling stories. And out came this Afro American called Brother Blue, quite tall. That time I was 5'8" before I shrunk. And he came over to me, and I was totally intimidated. And he said, "What is your name?" And I said, "It's Robert," very quietly. And he looked at me, and he put his arms out, and he said, "From now on, you're Robear." And caught
Oh,
on in all the storytelling worlds, and with my books, I'm called Robear. And people seem to really like it, and smile when I say it. So I stuck with it.
I love it. I was going to ask if you were French, Robert.
Yeah. Well,
That's a much better
that's
story.
yeah, it is quite a story, and it's true to every part of it. To the point that I said it very quietly. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I would like for you to tell our audience a little bit more about yourself and your storied past.
Okay. I really began writing stories on planes, and mostly I had an office in China, and it was at that time 24 hours to get to China. Well, what are you going to do besides not off every once in a while? And so I started writing, and I had started performing too, my stories that I had written, and the two came together. I became a storyteller in the storytelling world, and I, found what stories went over the best, and I put them in this book, the Why Men Are Suspicious book. And people who read it seemed to really like it. Although my favorite, my favorite review was liberal crap.
Oh no, no.
You're going to get mixed reviews on
Yeah.
everything. Yeah, I think I have about 120 reviews. So a lot of them were really from the first edition of this book, and
Okay.
it did not have not so funny stories. And I added that because I realized that not everybody thinks what I think is funny. May not. Nothing is more subjective than humor. And so, somebody may tell a joke and then somebody may laugh, but not everybody. And so I decided to insert 7 stories that were mostly not funny. And
Okay.
so that's why the title of the book.
All
Yeah.
right, and we'll get to some of those as well. So you were an unsuccessful encyclopedia salesman in your earlier days.
Yeah. In those days, what was my age
Were-
was probably 17 or whatever. I was not actually unsuccessful, although I felt that I saw quite a few. And not enough to really make me feel that this was a future. But
were, were they
I
Encyclopedia Britannica? Were they the Britannica?
Yeah, I think it was. It's so long ago. But in later life, I did become a salesperson for the products that I designed. I designed shoes and boots for close to 40 years. And I had a lot of success with my items. I sold to people like Walmart. And in those days, there were tons of discounters, which there
Yeah.
aren't today. And really, Walmart ate them all up. And one of the reasons that Walmart was so much more successful than the rest of the discounters, the Zayres and the Caldors and the Bradleys, was they had 1 day of sale event, all of these companies. Walmart had every day. So the customer
Yeah.
that came in on different days in these other stores, in the Zayre stores and the Bradley stores, and they didn't come on the day when there was a discount, they were annoyed. And basically, that's one of the reasons Walmart just wiped every one of them out. They were all gone. And in those days, there were thousands of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember. And I had no idea that that's how that all went. One
Yeah,
store
yeah, yeah, yeah.
in charge
No,
of them all. Yeah.
there
But
were
back to
so
that,
many.
back to the encyclopedias. I remember we had the Encyclopedia Britannica, and I remember seeing it right now at the top of our stairs. And whenever I had to do a project in school for, to do a project about bees or flowers or whatever, I would just devour those books in it was like finding jewels in them. I loved those encyclopedias. And again, those were early learning years, and now learning is so different, right?
Well, yeah, being the fact that, yeah, there's so many things to do besides read. But one of the things that made me successful as a salesperson with my product is I made the product
Yeah.
and I designed it, and I would tell the customers why. And so I had an advantage in that area because I had reasons of why I designed the product, and many of them sold, you know, hundreds of thousands of boots or
Boots.
shoes.
From boots to books. That should be the title of your next book, From Boots to Books. Tell me
Yeah.
what how did you get into boots and shoes? How did that happen?
Like, well, if you read Wham Bam, New York
You're
City, the Roaring '60s, you'll get the whole story. What happened was I created I hated what I was doing. Well, let me start. I was working in Boston, where I come
okay.
from.
I come from Braintree, by the way. I'm a
Yeah, I
Braintree
know.
girl.
Yeah. And the company that I was working for in Boston moved to New York. They were bought by a company in New York, and they asked me to come along. I did, but I didn't. I didn't particularly. I was very frightened. I was very shy. Um, you'll see it all in Wham Bam. And but I came, and I was unhappy with the job I had, and so I started a business called Robert's Fairly Famous Roast Beef Sandwiches, and I was selling them out of my apartment. And one night I got a call from a bar, which were it was really what was first happening. This is the '60s, is that the advent of bars being places for young people to go was new.
Mhm.
There wasn't even a Fridays. This place was called Lloyd's after the actor Lloyd. And one night I got a call from them, and they asked for, I think, something like 50 sandwiches. And I had enough roast beef for about 19.
Oh,
So I took it down to them, and I said, I didn't have enough. If you'd given me an early warning, I could have done it. And I looked in their kitchen, and I said, there isn't anybody there. And I said, you've got this beautiful bar with nobody in your kitchen. He said, I can't keep a cook. I said, you're looking at one. So they hired me as a cook, and I was making my roast beef sandwiches in there, and it got fairly famous.
fairly famous. I love it. I love it. So back to your book. And again, you're a funny man. When did you first know that you could make people laugh?
I didn't, and I still don't, because I don't know if any people was going to find it funny. You saw a couple of my performances,
Yeah.
and I give you an example. the first story in that performance is called This Old House. I don't know if you saw that,
I did.
but the first time I told that was in a parish church,
Okay.
and there were about 200 people there. And I told the story. I wasn't feeling particularly well because I had that pain in my hip,
Mm.
but the ovation I got and how many people were pleased was just incredible. I mean, I was standing there at the end, and I can't tell you how many people came up to me and said something about the shelf and something they identified with, and putting up a shelf. I mean, they just loved it.
Yeah.
About 2, 3 months later, I have a thing at my temple, um, which I called what do I call it? I call it still standing.
Still standing.
Yeah. And so I performed that It's Still Standing, along with 3 or 4 other stories. But I did not get the same reaction. I got a good reaction, but nowhere near I got at the parish. So you never know.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, yeah, you say subjective, you say humor is subjective, art is subjective, books are subjective, anything that's creative is subjective. And once you put it out there, yeah, it's no longer yours.
Ex-
Wow. Did you get in trouble in school? Were you a troublemaker?
I was not a good student.
Oh,
I had my problems in school. I have learning disabilities. And at those days,
they
because you
didn't
go
know.
back,
Yeah, they didn't know how to
nobody,
handle
nobody,
those. No.
nobody ever heard of learning disabilities, and nobody ever heard of the one that I had, which was paying attention. And I had, I went to a very prestigious school. I went to a school called Boston Latin, which actually, do you ever hear of Boston Latin coming from,
Well, yes, because
yeah,
my father spent some time there.
you know, it
And
was, it was
yeah,
created in 1635, and it was very, very proud of itself. But it did not have modern ways of teaching. And, if you didn't catch on, the hell with you. Um, yeah. And so I had a tough time. I had a tough time staying awake. But, I got through it. And I got to college. I had a difficult time in college because I got into the wrong courses. And, things were very different then.
yeah.
People did not know as much about education as as the world does today. And
Mhm.
there's so many things that have happened and so inspiring, And I know with my younger daughter, who also has learning disabilities, we sent her to a special school. And now she's a producer of movies. And she did extremely well because we sent her to a school that understood the problems that she had. And she became an outstanding student, getting, just all A's.
A
Uh,
producer of movies. I have a book for her. But this is not about me. This is about you. So you have, I think, what, 55 different chapters in this
61,
compilation? 60, 61
61.
now. Yeah, I think the original one had 55. One of one of your chapters is called Face It. And it's about your face. And you have a very interesting face. You have a great face. But tell our audience about your face and what people confess to you.
I always found it amazing. And I remember one time standing in line somewhere in China, waiting to get board a plane. The guy turned around to me. I had no idea who he was. And he said, "Do you know how much money I've made?" I said, "No." And he said, "I bought this stock." And he said, "That's why I'm able to travel all over the world. And I wish the same for you." And I just have had so many people say so many different things about the way I look, uh, that I've found it astounding. I never know how to react. And yeah,
But more than once, people have come up to you and for whatever reason have wanted to tell you how much money they have.
yeah. The other thing that too is I was at a carousel in California, and a guy came over to me and he said, "I want you to sign this book I have." And I said, "Well, who do you think I am?" And he said, "What are you, a wise guy?" He said, "You're very famous, as a matter of fact." I know who you are. He said, I don't like you. I think you're a lousy actor anyhow. And he walked away. And another time I was in someplace in New York City, and a woman looked at me and she said, I know who you are. I just can't think of your name, but I saw you on TV last night and you were fabulous. I said, well, I said, I usually am.
Oh, that is that is awesome.
I just had to have it. The book has, I can't remember it because, I haven't read the book actually in a long time.
Oh,
But
yeah,
yeah,
there
every
are.
once, yeah, every once in a while I go back because there are so many stories that people will mention to me, and I haven't even read it in a long time, so I have to go back and remember what the hell I wrote.
Well,
Yeah,
I haven't had such interesting interactions with people about my face, but I've frequently had people tell me that I look like their great aunt or their grandmother, and I'm not very complimented by that, but I let it go. Hopefully, they love their great aunt or their grandmother.
there's another story people have talked about. I was living in a town called Newburyport,
Yeah.
and we were new to it, and so was this doctor. Um, uh, who had just moved to the town. And he was celebrating, he divorced his wife, and he was celebrating his new marriage to, I think, one of his practitioners, nurses. And so we all came to his party to celebrate with him and at a pool. And he said, nobody can go in the pool. And one of his classmates from college jumped into the pool. And then everybody at the party, which was about 60 people, jumped in the pool and they took their clothes off. And my wife said, I don't think this is a good place for me. She said, I'm going to go home and check the laundry. And I said, well, I think you should, and I'll stay here to make sure that everything doesn't get out of hand. And so I had the delight of watching all these people their clothes on. And
Expressing themselves in a creative way.
yeah, exactly. Something that wouldn't have happened in my youth.
Oh,
Yeah, I talk about that in Wham Bam, New York City. I talk about the fact that I grew up in Dorchester, and if held a girl's hand, I thought I was lucky. And then all of a sudden, I moved to New York City in the '60s, and God had given us the pill,
oh my gosh, yeah.
and the world changed.
It sure did. Dorchester.
Yeah,
My grandparents lived in Dorchester, and my dentist was in Dorchester. Don't get
yeah.
me talking about my dentist. Oh, I got some horror stories there. Anyway, tell us about Mr. Fridge. What's the deal with Mr. Fridge in your book?
I just thought Mr. Fritz was a great character, and that he was a great attitude about, who he was, had, no problems with his ego. And, he also had something to say about every story.
Yeah.
And so I thought Mr. Fridge belonged in my book and has stayed there forever. He hasn't left.
He's fun. He's a fun character that pops up throughout your stories. So one of your chapters, and your chapters are like they're like your stand-up routines, right? I mean, they're very conversational, easy to read.
So,
You're telling the stories
yeah.
in each of these, and you have so many stories that are kind of ridiculous and wonderful. One of them is called A Collection of Nothing, about, and I want to ask, did you really have an obsessive collection problem, buying gadgets, buying all the latest gadgets that you were advertised to?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, how it happened was just as it says in the book, I used to watch these late movies that would start at 12 at night, and the movies would go along, and then towards the end, they would start hitting you with one ad after another with all of these gadgets. And I was fascinated with them. And my wife was not. And so one of them would come home and she'd say, another gadget, it's going in the basement. And so we had this collection. I can't tell you how many gadgets that went in the basement and became useless because couldn't find them anyhow.
Are
But
they still there?
I don't know.
You don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't know. I don't know if she knows, but there
Oh,
were, I'd see all these people that could do things, with different food things, and everything would look so beautiful. And then I take it home, it never worked the same for me. And so my wife said, I told you so.
The hose that was supposed to like retract after you used it. I bought one of those. Piece of you know what.
Yeah, yeah. No, it looks fabulous when you see them.
Well, I've been kind of the opposite. I had a friend who still gives me a hard time because I went decades without an ice cream scoop because I always thought, why do I need an ice cream scoop if I have a tablespoon? Yeah, so for decades I did not have an ice cream scoop. I finally got one was just right, actually just right, and now I see the value in it. But for the most part, I try not to, yeah, buy things because you just never know. You just can't believe those things, can you?
But they look so beautiful,
They look
and you say, well, if they can do it, I can do it.
so one of your chapters, and again, several of your chapters are about things that aren't so funny. So one of them I read was about where has the humor gone?
Oh,
And you get a little bit political in there.
yeah.
So how are you feeling now about things?
Very upset. I
Yeah,
mean, we have a criminal as president,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's scary. And the scary thing is, it's not him because he can't help who he is. It's how many people voted for him.
yeah, yeah.
That's what bothers me, and it doesn't seem to bother anybody. I mean,
Right.
you saw January 6th, and he was responsible for it, and all these policemen getting hurt, and getting hit,
Yeah, yeah,
and he's now letting all those people that did it out
yeah,
of jail. It's just, what kind of a world are we living in? What's happened to the United States, the country that is a law and order country, and we have a person who doesn't have any belief in law and order.
yeah. It's a very different world, and it's a world in which we need people like you. We need people who can find the humor in everyday things and share it as you do with some of your stand-ups. Your chapter on hugging, I really enjoyed. Were you hugged as a child?
No.
No.
No, no, my family did not hug. They did not kiss. It was not. My wife is very loving and very hugging and very huggable. Um, but no, there was no hugging. And, I talk about Latin school,
Mm,
um, that, I remember the difficulty in, really being too close to any boy,
mm,
you became suspicious.
yeah,
And, there was very, very strict rules about that, in those days. Homosexuality or
yeah, yeah,
lesbian and so forth. And you can see it now,
yeah,
what's happened with Trump as president. They're
yeah.
going back to those days and some,
Yeah. Well, let's hope that some of it's just talk. But you mentioned your wife, Esther, being a very loving person. I think my husband probably didn't grow up in a very huggy family either, but I forced myself on him into hugs. And so sometimes you can learn things, right? I think you probably learned how to hug.
yeah, I'm not a particularly good hugger, as I mentioned in the book. Um, and I've had situations where I've lost friends because I didn't have, they came at me with a hug and I wasn't really good at it.
Oh, well, that's
Uh,
their loss.
yeah. But,
And
the other thing is when you get back to comedy and comedians,
yeah.
they have a very difficult life. I mean, trying to be funny every night. I watch Stephen Colbert and he comes out with so much energy. And whether I think he's funny or not, I really take my hat off to him that he does it night after night after
Yeah.
night.
Yeah.
And, so many sad things have happened to comedians as a result of, the audience not reacting to them or, trying to be funny. I mean, it's a really tough job.
And
Thank
and
God.
now they're afraid. Now they're afraid of what they can say. I hope not. I hope there won't be
I think
any of
everybody's
that.
great. I think the CNN and MSNBC, I
Yeah.
think they're going to be very, very questionable what they're going to be able to talk about
Yeah.
because they're targeting them. And
Yeah.
I think our country's going to have a terrible overreaction.
I
So
think we're gonna power through. We're gonna power through. We're gonna keep doing yoga and we're gonna power through. Let's talk about your chapter. That's the title of your book, Why Men Are Suspicious of Yoga. So your wife, Esther, which by the way, you have on your, you can see her name is in your lower corner. And I think people know that you're not Esther. You're Robear. But the chapter about basically your wife who taught yoga for 35 years, guilting you into going to one of her classes.
Yes.
T-
It's,
tell, yeah,
she's
tell us
so
about that.
supportive. She's so supportive of everything I do.
Yeah.
She always came to my performances, and she'd sit in front of, and she's a very, very laughing person. She has a beautiful smile, and she loves to laugh, and she laughs and laughs. And as a matter of fact, I get jealous when she's watching Stephen Colbert or some other comedian, and she's laughing away, and I'm barely hearing them, and because whatever, my hearing's gone south, and so she would come to performance after performance, and she's, as I said in the book, we're riding in a car, and she says, "I have a question for you. How many how many yoga classes have you attended?" And I said, "Well, a few." And she said, "What does a few mean?" I think a few means none. And I said, "Well, I'll come to one soon." And she said, "What does soon mean?" And she pinpointed me and she said, "You make a date and I want you to come." And so I described my reactions when I came. Yeah.
So it's so funny, and listeners out there, you have to get this book, and even if it's just for that chapter, which is just so darn funny, because again, what goes through a woman's mind and what goes through a man's mind when certain instructions are given, completely different. And oh my goodness, you just had me rolling with that chapter.
And that's an interesting one you bring up because I performed that story and say an audience of 50 or 60 people, maybe 40 of them found it funny.
It
Some were
was
pissed, because, yoga is precious to them in so many ways, and they thought I was making fun of it, which I was to some degree. So,
yeah,
reaction to humor is very, very, very subjective to what I said in the beginning.
it's
And it's
short. Yeah, it
And so
short.
I take my hat off to comedians,
Yeah.
because it's such a difficult thing. Yeah.
Are you still performing live? As opposed to don't ever perform dead, but are you still performing?
I hope I can. That would be the best blessing you could give me.
Don't perform dead.
You're going to be really funny in death. You're going to have people rolling over.
In their seats.
Right? They could say I died laughing.
All right, you got a new gig there.
Yeah.
Well, Robert, author of Why Men Are Suspicious of Yoga, and of course your other book, Wham Bam, which I will have links to in my show notes. Do you have advice to anyone who might be considering doing a stand-up career?
Yeah, don't do it. I'd say that to anybody who wants to write a book. Don't do it.
Don't
I
do
have
it.
no performance on why you should write a book. Because I say, when you write a book, you become the most obnoxious person in the world. And the reason you become obnoxious is that you look at people and want to know if they've read your book. And once they say yes, you become worse. You want to know what they think of the book.
Yes. Yes. And that's a good point to bring up. And listeners out there, after you buy Robert Eisen books, and read them, leave a review on Amazon or wherever. And if you read any of my books, you can do the same too, because you know what? We authors and artists who have very subjective crafts and careers, we depend on you out there to help us, to keep us motivated, to keep us making people laugh, to keep us writing books that will make people think and maybe get angry and maybe give you a 1-star review because they don't agree with you, but that's okay, right? Because we all have our own
Absolutely.
opinions.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And in both books, I'm pretty proud of the reviews. The best reviews I've gotten, too. I had my book, Why Men in India. and I've gotten some wonderful reviews there. They've really read it, and it's interesting. The population of India, I think, is 2 billion people.
Wow.
Yeah, and here's the thing: people over in India, not like the United States, read, and they read in English, and
Yeah.
something like 80% of them read. Um, So that's, just a thought about that. I haven't taken Wham Bam there yet because my results so far are just mediocre.
Mm.
Uh, and I think it has to do with the company that I'm working with. But
Well, yeah, we've got to do our own marketing in many cases, and that's a whole different thing. But
the
um,
environment is an audio. Yeah.
oh, okay. Oh, all right. So your book's coming out is out in audio, which
Yeah.
again, a lot of people love just listening while they're doing yoga,
The thing
walking
about
their dogs.
why men is an audio it's only been out for about a month and it's
Okay.
sold close to 300 books.
Excellent. Oh, that is absolutely wonderful.
300 audio.
So, Robert, where can people find your books?
They're on all of the platforms.
On Amazon and different platforms. And I will have links and photos to everything we talked about today on my website at leadvillelaurel.com. Is there anything else you would like to leave our listeners with to think about?
Um, Well, I said it all in the sense that don't even think about writing a book. Because as Laurel will tell you, it's a lot of work and a lot of frustration. Yeah. And and again, people when they write a book, they mostly think that they've really written a fabulous book that everybody should enjoy. It doesn't happen
Yes,
as easily.
it, it
One of
does. Yeah.
one of
It,
the things that will happen is scammers.
oh,
Scammers, scammers will love your book. And I
okay.
cannot tell you how many phone calls I have gotten from scammers, proposals from scammers, and I mean they're good at it.
Yeah,
They're
they are.
better at it than we are as a listener. And the reason for that is, as I said, we all think we've written a great book. So the scammers know that. And when they get on the phone with you or an email to you, they cannot praise you enough. I mean, it's exactly what you want to hear. You are the most brilliant writer they have ever read. You are the best. So, of course, it's like the things I bought that are now in my basement. I mean, you're being praised to the sky by these people. And they're, as I said, they're not good at it. They're fabulous at
They
it.
are fabulous
And
at it.
they've read enough of your book so they know exactly what to say.
Yeah.
And so you can be caught. I've been caught a couple of times. And
Yes, yeah, scammers
my
are,
wife,
yeah.
my wife's just like with the things I bought. She'd say, they're fakes. Why are you listening to them? And she walks out of the room.
Shaking her head. And she's still married to you. How many years have you been with this woman? Has she been with you?
How long have we been married?
Yeah.
I go by my daughter's age. I think 57 years. Yeah.
Congratulations. And I wish your wife was here right now. I would congratulate her too for
Both got haircuts and she followed me. Yeah. But
that's
she just pulled into the garage, so maybe she'll come over. Yeah, I'd love her to come over. Yeah.
that your advice on scammers though, and it's something that we all need to watch out for, right? I mean, if someone contacts you, beware,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, just like they say with just about anything, you make the phone call. If you make the phone call, you're okay. But if someone calls you or contacts you and wants to butter you up,
Oh,
you're
and they do.
yeah, they
There's
do.
something out there, I'm sure you're aware of it, called Writers Beware.
No.
Writers Beware.
Oh, is it a website?
Yeah.
Okay.
And here's the amazing thing about it. I would say there's over 100 scammers listed on it. I've never counted them, but can you imagine how scammers can all make that money? That there's so many of them,
Yeah,
you know,
I can't. Yeah,
they
I can
all must
imagine.
make something, they must. God knows how many people, get bought.
Yeah.
And yeah. But you're right with somebody calling you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't answer if you don't recognize the number. Well, Robert Isenberg, thank you so much for your time. This has been
this
delightful. Your
was a
book
great.
Your book
Great
is,
conversation. Would you
your book
want
is,
to wait a minute for my wife?
oh, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
tell her, hurry up and get in here. But listeners out there, while we're waiting for Esther to come in and tell
She's
us,
out there with all the gadgets.
she's stuck with all the gadgets. We're gonna see what she really thinks about her husband and some of his proclivities. And while we're waiting, Robert's book, Why Men Are Suspicious of Yoga. There are funny stories in there. There are some that are not so funny. And of course, this other book, Wham Bam, I will have links to that on my website. And right now we're waiting for Esther to come in and say hello to us. And let's see. If any of you have questions for me, I would be happy to answer them. And of course, as always, I hope that you have all subscribed. Hit that subscribe button and like this
You
and
gotta find all the gadgets. She's
come
coming.
back from. Oh, she's coming. Is she bringing a gadget with her?
They want pictures of you too.
We want to we want to meet you. We want to meet you. This woman. Hello. Have a seat. Have a seat. I want to say hello to the woman who has lived with this man for how many years?
A few.
I think he said 57. Robert, sit back down.
57. Yeah, we met in 1965 and we got married in 1968. So
Oh
yeah.
my goodness. And he had us laughing about all the different gadgets that he just knew were going to make your life easier, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, and finding the correct chargers for the correct gadget. that because when he finds one he likes, you want it to keep working, but if you can't find the charger, it has a limited lifespan. And yeah, it's interesting.
And there are different chargers for every single thing that you buy, which is crazy, which is why people have boxes and buckets of cables and chargers and all that. Well, Esther, lovely meeting you. Thank you for dropping in. And we had a lovely visit with your wonderful, funny husband. He's a funny man, and I'm not just talking about his looks.
Yes, he has kept me smiling in many different ways.
I understand that. Well, thank you again for visiting with us, and listeners, hit that subscribe button, follow. Oh, there's your other book, Wham Bam. Okay. Hit like and follow, and thank you so very much. And check out my website at leadvillelaurel.com, where you can find links and photos to our visit today. Robear, keep making people laugh, okay?
Okay, and a wonderful interview. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
I'd like to find some of your books. So
all right, I'll send them to you.
Great.
You take care.